Well, what a beautiful setting we are in today. For those of you that may be viewing this lesson from our website page or Facebook page or our YouTube channel, a special welcome to you. Today we're in the beautiful amphitheater that is on our campus grounds here at Unity of Traverse City, socially distanced, of course, and proper safety protocols in place. And we're surrounded by the sights and sounds of nature, some of Spirit's most sacred of creations. And I have to say that we may also be visited by the sight and sounds of airplanes taking off from our local airport here, not so far from where we are located. And so if that happens, we'll just gently press the pause button, send some blessings to them for safe travels to wherever their destinations might be, and then pick back up with our lesson for today. And so to everybody, welcome back to our fall series for this year, fall series that we have titled Sabbath, being supported in our journey through Sabbath by a book by the same name, written by Wayne Muller. So I hope that you all have gotten a copy of the book for yourselves at that, along with the study guide and affirmation cards that we created and sent to you in the mail. They'll all serve to support you as we continue on through this 7-Sunday series. Last week, we began the series by focusing on the concept of rest. We looked at why it is necessary. We looked at some of the fears we have about it. And we also looked at the joyful new beginnings that it can bring. So today, we turn our attention to rhythm and the rhythms of life. What has been is what will be. And what has been done is what will be done. And there is nothing new under the sun. Those words are in the book of Ecclesiastes in the Bible, and they basically say that everything begins, ends, and begins again. It's a way of saying that there is a rhythm of creation. And Wayne Muller offers a litany of examples of this for us to consider. There is the rhythm between light and dark. There is the rhythm between the 4 seasons as one changes into the next. There is a rhythm between times of dormancy and times of growth, of expansion and contraction, between life and death, and so on. And we're in the midst of the rhythm of a seasonal change right now. And more than one person over the last couple of weeks has asked me, where did summer go? Now, where did my summer go? And I have a feeling that if Wayne Muller were here, he might ask us in return, were you watching? Were you listening? It came, as it always does. It is now returning to its time away, as it always does. To come back once again, as it always does. Perhaps we didn't allow ourselves enough time of rest these past few months. Time we did not give ourselves to notice all that summer had to offer. And if we are the folks who are wondering where summer went, the practice of Sabbath pertaining to the natural rhythms teaches us that it is not gone because it went by too fast. It's gone because we didn't take the time to rest, to stop and be in its midst. So while we may be missing summer now, truthfully, it's because we missed the rhythm of it when it was here. So the important takeaway from this example is to not gauge the seasons of life, whether they are the natural seasons or any other season of life, by how fast they move from one to the next. In the practice or practices of Sabbath, we're taught how to become aware that every season has its own time. The season's gifts for us, they're received when we take the time to savor what each season has to offer, to become a part of their natural rhythm. Now, there's another example that really helped me to get re-engaged with this particular aspect of practicing Sabbath. One that came to me as I was reading some of what Mr. Muller had to write about the rhythm of seasons that apply to our children. Just as seasons, they don't push their way, they don't force their way into existence. They wait until it's their time. So too, do our children act in very much the same way? And I recall that in the remembering about those, the not forcing, not pushing, that I had that same kind of knowing to not do that as a young mother. I remember how many times I would take one of my infant sons and I would put him, on the floor, on his stomach. And then I would stand over him and grab him at his belly and just lift him up and trying to get him familiar with the position that he would need to have in order to learn how to crawl. And face plant after face plant after face plant, I would get back up, go over to him, stand over him, and lift that body back up again until that moment when I stopped pushing the process. And I just began waiting for that natural rhythm of his life to unfold in its time. If there was going to be another face plant by that child, it was going to be one of his own choosing. And then there was that moment when it all came together. He pushed himself up. He teetered back and forth for probably what was the longest moment of his life at that point in time. And then off he went in a full and successful crawl. And gosh, did I ever celebrate what I can see now as having taken the time to stop pushing the process. I took the time to rest, to wait, to stop, to watch, to be just present to him, and then fully rejoice in the fruits of his labor. We could do this with any of the rhythmic seasons that are a part of our everyday lives. I'm telling you right now that since 9 o'clock this morning when I arrived here up through now and continuing throughout the rest of our time together, I am relishing the season that is our coming back together on these grounds today. And I'm going to continue to remember all the memories and bring them into my times of Sabbath as I go forward. We can have that same kind of experience, to be present to the season that is a given moment, the season that is a phone call, the season that, yes, is even a Zoom connection, when we become present to them as a means of remembering the Sabbath. As last week's reading offered, remembering the Sabbath are not words to bring up feelings that it is a rule or a law or an obligation or something to do out of guilt. As Muller writes, remembering the Sabbath is a remembrance of a law that is firmly embedded in the fabric of your nature. It is a reminder of how things really are, the rhythmic dance to which we unavoidably belong. Now, stopping that pushing is something that may take some consistent practice of Sabbath, because it's really been a part of our lives, a part of our belief systems even for centuries now. There is a word, eschaton, and it is a Greek word, and it came into our belief systems and into our prophecies in the first century in Palestine. And the word eschaton means the end of time. It was a common belief of the people at that time that the end of history was drawing near and a Messiah would arrive to announce the end of time. Well, guess who arrived? Jesus. And as he began his ministry, offering his teachings, telling his stories, sharing his parables, what happened? Well, his followers began to interpret his words in ways that led them to believe that he was this chosen Messiah and he had arrived in order to announce the end was drawing near. And as a result of that belief, the disciples, who then emerged as apostles, the writings, the scriptures, the teachings, all began to focus on immediate repentance and salvation if there was any chance for anyone to enter into that promised land. Now, many of these teachers believed that the end was going to occur during their lifetimes, but of course it didn't. And yet, how many times still today do we hear predictions about the end of the world? Now, in addition to all of that, Muller also points out that our Western civilization, we are still obsessed with the concept of eschatology, today seeking out the new and improved promised lands of modern Western civilization. He calls this modern day eschatology progress. Progress. There is always something that can be new and improved. There's always something that can provide greater efficiency, higher productivity, elevated standards of living. Muller defines today's idea of the promised land when he writes, at the end of progress, we will have thoroughly mastered nature and all its inherent problems. We will all live in a place and time in which all is well, all diseases cured, and all wars ended, and a chicken in every pot. We are hurtling towards the eschaton. There is no time to rest because we are on a very important mission to go boldly where no species has gone before. We never rest on our laurels. We never rest at all. Every moment is a necessary investment in the divinely ordained, completely unquestioned goal of progress. Now, this constant pushing towards some place in the future, in the first century, that was all aided and aided by the messianic prophecies. Today's constant forward pushing of progress is aided by the wonders of technology. But there's also a theology of progress. Do you recognize the words that come from the book of Psalms that talk about laying down in green pastures, sitting beside quiet waters, refreshing one's soul? Who's doing the laying and the sitting and the refreshing? A dead person. It's a dead person. I have never spoken those words to or about someone who's alive. I've only spoken those words about someone who's dead. So the theology of process is one, or progress is one that says that if you're alive, well, then you keep on working. You keep on working and pushing and doing and improving and moving towards this promised land of perfection on earth until you die. And then you can rest all you want. Where's the rhythm of life and death in that? But the theology of spirit and the practice of Sabbath teach us something very different. They teach us that there really isn't any place to go to or get to, because wherever you are in the moment, it is holy ground. It is sacred ground. They teach us that there are so many gifts and such abundance to be had right here and now. That what Jesus was actually teaching was not about an afterlife somewhere far away, but rather a present day life to be lived right here. As Wayne Muller describes it, the gifts of grace and delight, they are present and abundant. The time to live and love and give thanks and rest and delight is now, this moment, this day. Feel what heaven is like. Have a taste of eternity. Rest in the arms of the divine. We do not have miles to go before we sleep. The time to sleep, to rest, is now. We are already home. But those words certainly take the harshness created around death in its relationship with the eschatology of progress and gently brings it back into the natural rhythm it embodies in its partnership with life. Now, I learned something about the Jewish tradition of Sabbath in the reading of this week's chapter in our book. And that is that it begins precisely at sundown. Not at a set time of day shown on a clock, but at sundown. So that might be late afternoon in the winter. It might be later into the evening in summer. We're going to hit that pause button now for the flight that's taking off. Now, it wasn't new to me that the Jewish Sabbath begins at sundown. What was new to me was that word precisely and how it is taken literally. You don't finish anything that you may have been doing in the moment before sundown. You stop. As Muller writes it, you stop because it's time to stop. That's the way it is, period. And that's a bit hard for me to imagine, for myself. And it would take some practice for me to become comfortable with leaving something unfinished, especially if I only needed 15 or 20 seconds more to get it done. Type a couple more words, hit send, and then I'm there. But taking that extra time, even the 15 seconds, would be a dishonoring of Sabbath. It would also be a demonstration of resisting a very important ingredient of practicing the Sabbath, and that is surrender. As far as Wayne Muller is concerned, he feels that surrender is a required ingredient of Sabbath. He says this because he feels that if the only time we stop is when we are finished with everything on our lists, then we never will stop. Because our work is never 100% done. There's always one thing that leads to the next, right? If we embrace the rhythms of life as we've been talking about them, this morning, the perspective that everything begins, ends, and begins again, we can clearly see that without stopping until we are finished, we will end up being the one that the minister is talking about when they start speaking those words about green pastures and still waters. Surrender is what will help us to see that what we do does not always need the urgency that we affix to it or that progress affixes to it. That there's a freedom to be had by simply letting something go unfinished, knowing that this world is still going to keep turning, knowing that those tasks, they're very patient. They will wait for us to come back to them after we've taken time for Sabbath. The surrendering, stopping, also helps us to see how very often in those times that we are striving for the more and new and improved whatever, that we really already have all that we need. I really loved the analogy that Wayne Muller offered in the book for this week, when he said that when we stop the inhale of our breathing, it's not because we now have all the air that we will ever need. We stop because we have all we need for that specific breath. And the rhythm that is then created by the ensuing exhale creates that space, makes room for more oxygen to come in when we need it. So we could take that very simple experience that we've all had, a gazillion times so far in our lives, and begin to apply it in other experiences in our lives. In work, for example, do I really need to keep working tonight to finish this specific task, or have I done enough for today? Can I instead take time to replenish and then pick it up again, continue moving it towards its completion tomorrow? Do I really need to check social media one more time? Or have I done that enough for today? Have I listened to enough news today, and yet I've not listened nearly enough to spirit? It can be a very delicate, even challenging dance for us to do in the age of progress theology, but it's a very good dance to practice regularly. Because here are a few things Mahler says can happen that we may find ourselves doing if we don't. We'll find ourselves acting before we're ready, speaking before we know what to say, and responding before we feel the truth of what we know. Doing those things, so very often, inadvertently or not, leads to things like suffering and hurt, misconceptions, misperceptions, inaccuracies, false assumptions, and a whole lot more. As a minister, I've had to learn how to press that stop button. It's not hard for someone in ministry, and this is usually very evident in the earlier years of this profession. It's not hard for a minister to fall into a false belief that they should know all the answers, that they should be able to perceive all of the questions, have all the answers ready, neatly filed away to bring forth in a given moment's notice. And the conference for our Unity Great Lakes region that I attended all last week dramatically reinforced how false that belief really is. So much so that this past Wednesday, in the midst of that conference, we had our board meeting here at the church, and one of our congregants attended. She shared some feedback with us and asked very, very important questions, not just a couple. There was a 4 or 5 or 6 very important questions, and my response to her was, I don't have the answers. I don't have the answers, but I, along with so many other of my colleagues who were at that conference and throughout this country, we are certainly living in the questions. What I know for me, and I believe for you, is that Sabbath is more important now than it may have ever been before. What our region's leaders left our conference with was a deep inner knowing of the importance of stopping, of taking time to reinvigorate our bodies, taking time to remember to eat, to drink in nourishment for our bodies, to do whatever it is that refreshes our souls. Because in essence, we reminded each other that it's when those practices and others like them of Sabbath begin their rhythmic movement in us, that is the time that we are able to listen. We are able to listen to what Muller wrote as being the sound the heart makes as it speaks the quiet truth of what is needed. To everything, there is a season, a time for every purpose under heaven. It's from Ecclesiastes. In the season that is this coming week, I want to ask and really encourage you to take some time for the purpose of unintentional Sabbath. I offered an explanation of what I mean by that in our study guide booklet for this week's lesson under the section of My Sabbath Practice. And just as a very quick aside, especially for those of you that are watching and maybe being outside of the Traverse City area, I want to share with you that these materials that I reference, the study guide booklet, the affirmation cards, they are available at our website. You can download them for free, use them as you wish. You can edit them if you wish. Just go to our website, unitytraversecity.org. At the top of the page, click on the link of Media and Resources, and then choose the tab under Ministry Leader Resources. And so here's what I share in the study guide. This week, try stepping into your Sabbath practice of choice with no intention at all. Whether it is a walk or sitting in the silence, journaling, or anything else, enter into it with no plan as to how it will go or how long it will last. As our book notes, let your soul catch up with you. Think about all that we have been through just in these last 6 months. All of the added stresses, the anxieties, the uncertainties, all of the new questions that maybe we have answers for, maybe we still have to discern those. All of that stuff happening all around us. Let your soul catch up with you this week. Let a natural rhythm lead you. And when you feel complete, check in with your thoughts, your emotions, your body, your spirit, and see what is present for you in each of these areas that make up your overall being. Make note of how the concept of time was either present for you or perhaps non-existent. And then today I will add to that. At that point of your process, then listen. Listen to your heart. Listen to the sound it makes as it speaks the quiet truth to you of what is needed. God bless you.